guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. This week has been kind of light with the videos, but settle in, this is going to be a long one. So I'm using some products from Sunny Studios. I'm using Oceans of Joy, Tropical Scenes, the Ocean View, and then I can't remember the name of the sentiment set. But anyway, we're going to do a Peekaboo scene card. You can do like the Peekaboo card part of it any way that you would like. Mine's going to be a scene. So I've pulled out a couple of different sizes of circles and I've kind of laid them out. Something to note. At the whichever one at the top, you don't have to do circles, by the way. You can do any shape you want. You just don't want it to be too close to the top because it can kind of interfere with the seam. So I'm going to cut a piece to 4 1/4 by 6 1/2, and then I am going to score it at the 1 inch mark so that the front of the card is that full 5 1/2 inches. We're making an A2 size card. And this flap, like you can see where it's scored, is going to be the part that folds over to connect our piece. And then here, this is the card base, which is 4 1/4 by, it is 8 1/2 by 5, no, 11. Lord have mercy. It is 11 by 4 1/4. And then I did the other one so that you would open it like a book, just so you could see it both ways, but I'll show you that at the end. So here, this is the piece that we scored and has the 1 inch flap. That's what we're going to do our die cutting out of to create that top kind of peekaboo piece. So once I have my circles in place, then I'm going to go ahead and tape them down and run them through my die cutting machine. So, again, just that one at the top, just make sure it's not too close. Otherwise, when you go to fold it over, it won't lay flat. It'll kind of like round up, which we don't want. And then obviously we don't set the fold yet because we are going to have to run it through the die cutting machine and we would just be undoing our hard work. So before we get too far into this, I do want to mention, Sunny Studios is actually having a sale because they are turning 10. And so they're doing 20% off all of Sunny Studio branded products with discount code 10 years. I will link that below. This excludes retired products. One of the retired products is the Oceans of Joy that I'm using, but these are already super discounted. So the Oceans of Joy set right now is $11.99. So here I am laying down the piece that we've die cut out over just another A2 size panel. And this is going to help me to create the scene. So I want to know where my little guys need to sit. So they will be seen through my little peekaboo windows. So that's kind of what I'm doing here. And then I'm going to cut along this top edge right through where I want my little turtle to sit because I want him to look like he's kind of paddling on top of the water. So I'm going to cut right through there with the wave. This is from the Oceans of Joy die set. And then that bottom piece is actually going to become my sand at the bottom. So here I am holding this in place so that I can very lightly trace the top of it so that when I go to put in my sky, I know exactly what needs to be covered. For a sky, I do typically prefer to use a brush. Why am I having such a hard time today? I don't know. I am using a piece of masking paper on the back of the card just so that you won't see any of that ink blending and it'll look like a nice clean back. And this is just the 1 inch Post-it note tape. But anyway, I like to use a brush when I'm doing skies because it allows me to get a really soft blend from the blue, or in this case blue-green, I'm using Salvage Patina, to the white. So it gives the illusion of kind of like some soft clouds. I totally sped this up. I do not ink blend this fast. So once I got some of my ink laid down, I did go ahead and erase that pencil mark because if you ink blend over top of it, you can trap it so that you can't erase it. So we don't want that. So there, I'm just double checking how it looks, and then I will completely erase all of my lines on the base. For this one, I'm not going to completely erase them. I'm going to lightly erase them, and then that way, that will still guide me for my stamping. Now, you don't necessarily have to do the stamping, but I like to be sure that I'm sure about where they're going. Before we get to the stamping, we are going to do some more ink blending. So I'm going to do the large piece as the ocean, as the water. So lighter at the top, darker at the bottom. And then for the small piece, that is going to be my sand. And I will do the same thing, even though it's only 2 colors, lighter at the top, darker at the bottom. And once again, I totally sped this up. So, anywho, they are having a sale, and their retired products are already super discounted. I actually bought these stamps. There is a point to this, I promise you. I bought these stamps back in like March, and they have another set, which is a flamingo set. And so I bought that to make my sister's birthday card in May, because my middle sister loves flamingos. And right after that is when my mom got her health took a turn for worse, and then we came home on hospice. So I never got to use them. But when I was doing my order, I somehow, I don't know, sleep deprivation or just not paying attention, I somehow put 2 flamingo stamps into my cart and not the stamp and the die. And the owner of Sunny Studios, who, by the way, I do not, I know a lot of people in this industry. I do not know her. I just think that her images are cute and I like to make scenes with them. But I don't know her. I'm just a regular customer just like you guys. Here, I am going to add some interest. I'm just going to add some kind of lines at the top. I can only do this with this clean water because I use distress inks and it will react with it. But it's just going to kind of bleach out some of the lines so that it looks like there's a little bit of movement at the top. So I'm doing that first with just clean water. Then I'm going to go in with a clear glitter marker. And then I will also do some very small spatters in the background with both clean water and with perfect pearls. This just adds some interest and some shine into the background so that the color isn't completely smooth. And obviously you guys know I love all of the shiny, shimmery, glittery things. So that adds another element of that in there. So anyway, I don't know her. I like her stamps, and I was going in because I do want to support small businesses. As you guys have probably seen, over the last couple of months, there have been some stamp companies that have been closing for various different reasons. But in, just the last few months, My Favorite Things closed, Crafty Meraki closed, I feel like I'm missing somebody. Picket Fence didn't close, but they are changing their business model, so I'm not exactly sure what's going on with them. But they are still having 70% off sales. And then, Erin Lee, I thought she was going to close, but then I think she's just switched to doing smaller releases. So you'll probably see me using some stuff from her here soon, so that I can continue to support her. But anyway, there are businesses that are legitimately closing in our industry. Here, I'm just dry fitting this and checking to see how it goes. Once I have everything in place, I am going to lay this here so that I can get the placement for my stamps. This is the part that I was talking about that you don't necessarily have to do, but I prefer to do this so that I know when I'm putting everything together where my main elements need to be, so that way I don't have other elements competing in that space. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick these up with my Misty Door, and then I will move move the top layer and then the sand. I also made a mistake with this card, and I did have to do a portion of it over again, and I left that in because I think it's super important. And you want to be stamping with ink that is safe for alcohol markers, because we are going to be doing lots of coloring. In this case, I'm using Honeybee's Be Creative Intense Black ink. So anyway, our craft stores are closing, and this industry is having a very hard time due to the tariffs. But when I talk about supporting small business, like why that is important is, in this case, Sunny Studios. I don't know her. I'm just a regular everyday customer. She could have just processed my order the way that I put it in and sent me, the 2 flamingo stamp sets. And then when I got it, I would have been disappointed that I didn't have the dies to go with it in order to be able to make my card. And instead, she sent me an email and was like, hey, I was looking at your order and I was getting ready to pack it, and I noticed you have 2 flamingos in there, and, maybe you are buying one for a friend or whatever, but I just wanted to double check before I, before I packed it and shipped it out, that you didn't mean to order the dies, which I totally did mean to order the dies. So I was able to email her back, and I was like, I totally meant to get the dies. Like, thank you so much for reaching out. I super appreciate that. And so, I was able to, get her the correct amount of money. And then she sent my order, and that is, and now here I am. I think I've done, 3 or 4 videos with their products, because I do genuinely like their products, but also because I do genuinely appreciate their owner. Let's go back to the card. So here that's where I made my mistake. I stamped down my coral reef scene, and I didn't move my sand. And since I wanted that to sit behind my sand and look like a deeper layer beneath, I should have removed the sand, and I didn't. And the reason that I left this part in is because even when you have somebody who's been making scene cards for pretty much the entirety of my card making hobby life, I still make mistakes. And so I stamped down the sand, and then I die cut that out, and I just re-ink blended it. And it wasn't like the end of the world, but it was still an error that I made, and I wanted to share with you guys in case you're going through your process and you're like, oh, well, when I watch these videos, their cards are always perfect. Nah, fam, mine aren't. And they never will be, and that's okay. So here I stamped my images down. Those 2 rock formations are from I think the tropical scenes. And then I also stamped out the coral again. And the reason that I did that is because I wasn't sure if I wanted to do the coral part as part of the background, which is what you're going to see here, or if I wanted to do it as part of the foreground and have it be brighter. So, this is just a little bit faster than the way I normally do the coloring, because it is a long one. It's a long one, yo. But I think it's well worth it. So these fish that you see me coloring in the background, are going to give depth to our scene. So I'm picking colors that I know are going to work really well with the blues and the teals that I've put down. And so that's going to be anything that it's next to on the color wheel. So blue or blue-green are next to green, yellow, pink, purple. All of those are going to work really nicely. And so I am utilizing those colors to help push these into the background. And the same thing with the corals. I am going in, like here, I'm doing these ones pink. And you'll see when the final card comes together that because these are a bit more muted, they sit in the background and they offer a different perspective that like the ocean continues on, like that we have a front row seat to our little scene, but then as it carries on further back, there is more out there. It just gives us a little bit more depth and dimension into our card. And so for the most part, for the shading, we're looking at any point where two things meet or any point where one object lays on top of the other. That's where we're going to be adding our shading. For the fish, because the sun is on top, like that would be our light source. So when I colored them that the tops of their bodies would be a little bit lighter and the shadows would be darker underneath. So anyway, she very nicely sent me exactly what I wanted and not exactly what I ordered after reaching out to me. And so I've always been a person who like has supported small business, but in this case, like I'm so happy to support her because she, genuinely cares about her customers. And that's pretty apparent. So with that said, Gina K recently put out a video, and I think that it's definitely worth a watch, where she's talking about the way that the tariffs are affecting the craft industry. And don't kid yourself, it is affecting every single craft company, because with dyes, there is no longer a U.S. dye manufacturer. So for people to say, well, if you weren't producing your dyes in China or in another country, then they would be more affordable. There is not an option. There literally is no option. The last one was Dyes Direct, and it closed at the beginning of this year. So now there is no option. But anyway, so she's talking about how, she's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because she doesn't want to have to raise her prices, but she can't absorb the price of the tariffs. And I totally get that. So if you are interested in why companies are closing, why the prices are, changing or things are changing within the craft industry, it's well worth a watch. Another one that I will link below is Spellbinders. They put out a couple of different videos talking about this. And it was Yana Smakula for Spellbinders, and then also I think it's Denzel, I think is how you say his name. So those are very good videos for a lot of information about that if you're interested. Here, I did color this whole thing. You'll see it at the end. And this is sped up super, super fast, but I didn't end up using it. Now, I did not throw it away. I put it back in my in the package, so the next time, but I did color this the same exact way that we just colored the one that's underwater. This is just the bright version because the colors are not muddled by the blue. So the only difference is I think the one I colored 3 of them yellow underwater, and then in this one I did supplement one that was orange. And then we're going to move on to the coloring of the animals. So for the whale, I believe this is drawn to be more like a beluga whale, where they have the rounder heads. But I wanted to add just some little interest to the bottom of his belly. So I did kind of like the stripes that you would see probably more like on a humpback whale. But it's just something that adds a little interest. And then for the shading here, because there is that large rise of his head, I added shading kind of coming up from his tail and kind of up from his forehead. That's going to make that middle portion of his head the lightest, which will give him a more round appearance. For all of these, I'm not being worried about coloring over their eyes because I intend to go back with my white gel pen and put in their little white dots so they're nice and bright and white instead of trying to color around them, because that does not sound like fun. So the industry is changing, and so hopefully they can we can survive it. I mean, basically, if you are still in a position where, you can partake in this hobby, just please make sure that where you're choosing to spend your money is with companies that you love, because you will help keep them afloat during this time before, until we can figure out a more stable kind of situation. So I colored my octopus purple. I left the lightest part in the center of his face, as well as where like the round bend of the tentacles is. For these fish, I colored them the same way that I colored the fish in the background, except I added 2 purple ones. So I have like the blue and in the background fish, and then 2 blue, and then 2 purple, because I thought that those would look really nice together. And I wanted to have, I like bright colors. I wanted to have kind of a variety, just a variety of different ocean life. It's been, now I told you in the beginning, that I had bought these, and then there were some other things I bought too that I haven't even had a chance to use yet. I got a whole thing of Concord 9th that I haven't even touched. But anyway, there have been only maybe a few cards that I have created since my mom has passed where I was able to sit down and genuinely just kind of get lost in the process. This was one of those cards for me, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, this card took me a long time, but I enjoyed every single second of it. I enjoyed the kind of over-the-top scene, all of the coloring, all of the details, even like at the beginning where we were kind of painting in those wave lines to have some reflective light. Is that necessary? No, absolutely not. Did I do it anyway because I thought it would be a pretty detail? Yes, I did. So that's why my video's almost 40 minutes long, if you can believe that. So here for these little goldfish, I did some of them solid pink and I did some of them solid orange. And then I did some of them kind of like a combination of the two. So one of them I put in a stripe after the fact with some of the pinks. And then another one I did part of it pink and then part of it orange. If you've watched my videos in the past where we have, kind of mixed colors, you just, with copic markers, you just want to look at that bottom number. So I used an RV04 and an RV02, and then I used a YR04 and a YR09. So those 4 and 4s play nicely together. For our turtle, we have a when you're doing a big scene like this, you want to repeat those colors. So even though we have a lot going on, it doesn't look super busy, and using the same colors and creating several visual triangles is going to help everything look super cohesive. So that is I chose these greens for some of my coral, and then I'm also using that for my turtle. Now I did use a little bit of brown as well. The brown I used was an E55, and I blended that with a YG03 for a little bit on his belly and then a little bit on that edge of his shell. Again, just adding a little bit more interest. For these corals down here, because we colored so many corals in the background, those ones are pretty much the same. So I didn't show you. This one is the only one that's really different. The shape is really different. And so that's why I left this one in. This one has almost a lot of little oval kind of tentacles. And so I did the top portion of it lighter, and then obviously it's going to be darker where it's tucked behind the rock. So yeah, this one, it was just so fun to just sit and kind of put it all together, and not have to think about it. You guys know, if you've been here for a while, like that I had a super stressful job previous to this. And so card making was like my stress reliever, which I think is probably one of the reasons why it makes me so sad what's going on in the industry. Because for some people, it's going to mean that they are not going to be able to enjoy their hobby. Here, I did a little bit, the front of this card is going to be a little bit boring, right? Because we just have like the peekaboo windows. So I wanted to make sure my sentiment was interesting. So I chose a larger sentiment. It's scripty. And then we're going to do a little bit of like a gradient. So I stamped it twice in a medium blue. And then I'm going to come in with this kind of medium teal shade. And at first I used a finger dauber and I just tapped it onto the stamp. And then I will push it down. And that does work, but it's very, very subtle. And if you guys know anything about my cards, they are rarely subtle. Also, my personality, very, very rarely subtle. So instead, I started inking up, like for this one, I inked up like 3/4 of it. And then along that top edge, I dabbed it with my sponge dauber. So now you can see we're starting to get that gradient. And then so I moved on then to the next darkest color. And for this one, I basically inked up mostly just the bottom of the birthday, tapped it with the finger dauber, and then stamped that down. And I did that one twice as well, I think. And then we have a really nice kind of tealish blue gradient that's going to help add some interest to the front of our card with like among those little peekaboo windows. So once that's done, I am going to cut that out with its coordinating die. I'm also going to cut out everything that we've colored with the coordinating die as well. You can see over on the happy birthday one, I did stamp another crab. That one I think is from Ocean View, and he's just a little bit chubbier, like a little chubbier crab. So here I wanted to show you what it looked like with the bright coral in the background. And it's not that it's wrong. I mean, I think it's really pretty, but it doesn't have as much depth and it looks a little bit busier. So like once I had everything laid out, I was like, I don't really love it, with how busy it was. So then I pulled that out and now you can see how it creates that, different kind of depth, and pushes the part of the scene that is brighter to the foreground, which is really what we want. So here, I'm going to start gluing everything down. And again, if you have watched my videos before, the next part will not be a surprise to you because I don't like the white outline on dies. I appreciate dies because I don't necessarily love fussy cutting. Back when I first started stamping and stuff, it was a necessity. And now, if I needed to if I wanted to support a company that I loved and I needed to save money, I would still buy the stamps and I would not buy the die. That isn't going to be the case for everybody because everybody has different needs, different mobility issues or fine motor skills or whatever. So there's no shame there. I'm just saying for me at this stage in my crafty making, I would let the dies go and I would buy more stamps. But that's also partly because of how I enjoy making cards. I enjoy making scenes. So if I have to stamp my images and fussy cut them out to build a scene, then I have done that in the past and I would do that in the future. So here, everything is kind of glued down, and now I'm going to go in before I add the foremost layer. I'm going to go in and I'm going to blend in all of these white die cuts. So basically I just go in and I color the edges to match the color that is behind it. Sometimes I have the color in a marker spot on, and sometimes I have to kind of layer the colors to get them to match my ink blending. For this one, I don't think I had to layer any colors at all. I think I pretty much had all of the colors that would work. Again, I'm just going to double check that my little scene is showing through and where I intend to put the happy birthday is going to work. Here, I did take a blue-green. This was a BG45, and where the turtle is supposed to be underwater, I followed that curve and laid down the blue-green on top of it. It is a little bit harder to see on camera, but in real life, you can see that. And then I'm going to start adhering the foreground. For this, I didn't want it to cover my octopus, so I smushed it all the way over to the right-hand side, and then I just cut off the extra. But because I colored all of it and I'm not going to let it go to waste, I'm actually going to adhere that on the other side of the card to change up the rock outcropping there and build that up. So there's that symmetry. Why are words hard? And then it creates kind of this dimensional little pathway to that darker coral that's set in the background. So once I got all those done, then I do like to go in and add a shadow underneath my images. This helps ground them and kind of bring the whole scene together. I used the same browns that I used when I did the background. Obviously now they just look different because they're on, brown instead of on blue. And then I also did a series of, dots, which is it's called stippling, and that adds some texture to that sandy ground. It kind of reiterates the dots that you see in the stamping of that like sandy curve. So once I have all of those done, then we can start working on the details and then assembly. So I added some clear glitter to all of my little characters because I love the glitters. And then I added, like we talked about before, the highlights to their pupils with a white gel pen. And then I also added some highlights, like along the whale's back, the turtle shell, the fishes, all those things that just kind of add a little bit more interest. So now that we're ready to put our things together, I'm going to use a bone folder. In this case, I'm going to fold this like a traditional A2 card, as if this was the front and then it has a back. For the Peekaboo part, I'm going to fold the flap down, and this is where I told you I would show you both ways, remember? So here, this would be like we'll have the sentiment there, and then I also cut an additional one so that it would look put together. But so here, ours, I'm just going to use a piece of tape to hold it. So it opens once, opens twice. That's where your message would be. Nobody would see it. It just opens on this beautiful ocean scene. If you wanted to do the book style card base, which is a little bit more traditional, then you would put the Peekaboo part over the top. You would flip open the top and then open it to the left, and then your sentiment would be in there. So you can do them either way, whichever way that you prefer your card to open, or how you prefer people to interact with it. When you are getting ready to adhere the Peekaboo portion, you can use dry adhesive or wet. I used liquid adhesive. And then I put my card face down into like the Peekaboos and lined up the edge. I double checked it that everything was lining up where it needed to go, so that all of our little things would be seen, and then folded over the flap. I did reaffirm that fold with my bone folder and also press down the parts where it was glued. And then that's our little Peekaboo window. So as I was saying, our front is a little like meh, but we're going to do our best to, kind of bring it up to do it justice. So here I'm going to adhere that happy birthday. I'm being careful about where I'm putting the glue because I don't want it to leak into my scene. But you're going to see the whale along the top of the H, and then you'll see the little octopus and the crab underneath the Y. So it is overhanging those scenes, but you can still see the little critters between. And then I'm going to use that second one that I cut out of white to adhere to the back, so the inside does have a finished feel. And then, we're going to, because I can't stop myself, we're going to add some gemstones. These are the rainbow rhinestone gemstones that I like to use. So just to reiterate, these are all on sale. They're 20% off. It goes through the 25th at midnight Pacific time. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope that this inspires you to try a little Peekaboo card, or maybe it inspires you to to try to do an ocean scene, but I hope more importantly that it inspires you to support small businesses. So thank you guys so much for spending your time with me. I will catch you on the next video. Bye.